Hello and welcome to The Gathering. My name is David Ault, and as always, it is a joy and an honor to have you here with me. I've been spending a couple of hours outside because it's a beautiful spring morning, and nothing brings me more joy than to get my hands dirty and to plant things and prune things and experience the reward that comes from um, previous activity, planting bulbs and whatnot. So it's this gorgeous spring day here in Atlanta. And as I was involved in that, I realized everybody's not having the same experience. Even here in the United States, as I tape this, there are people who are experiencing unprecedented amounts of snowfall. And even though I think we're all used to the variance of weather in our lives, we know that it's completely varied across our globe, that we don't necessarily have the same acceptance or understanding about how varied we all are experiencing life. We do with reference to weather, but we don't actually fully understand the complexity and the nuance with which we all have our particular reference point, our emotional intelligence, our cultural indoctrination, if you will. And so when we create these hard lines drawn in the sand with regards to what is right and what is wrong, we are forgetting the complexity and the nuance and the history and the culture of what everybody's journey has been. And that's the basis of what I was thinking about as my hands were dirty this morning in the soil, and what I wanted to come in real quickly and share with you. Because I was reflecting on a very powerful TikTok that I saw, a video of a young woman who was sharing a memory of when she was 16 and she was on her way to biology class. She loved this class. She loved this teacher. She said that he was highly loved and highly engaged and was really passionate about teaching. And she said, but on this day, when they walked in, all of the desks were rearranged and they were put into this big circle. And once all the students were in there, he very militaristically announced for them to sit down and to shut up. And so they were taken aback, but they did as they were told. And in the center of this circle was another desk with a goldfish bowl. Inside was a goldfish. And so he reiterated what the instructions were, that if they spoke or if they got up, that they would immediately be dismissed from this class and they would actually fail the class. She said that not only was she puzzled and emotional by the Jekyll and Hyde switch within him, but that she was very much engaged with her grades and was an A student and really had her sights set on a particular university path, and that now something was feeling threatened inside of her. The assurance of her future was being threatened inside of her, and it was creating a lot of emotion and complexity. And the teacher then went to the goldfish bowl, took out the goldfish, and placed it on the desk, and then left the room. And all of the students were looking at one another, kind of in a bit of anguish and surprise, because here was this fish floundering for air. And they were instructed that if they said anything or moved, that they would fail. And she started to come face to face with, she didn't even use this term, but this is my term, with her own self-preservation. She called the video the Bystander Effect. And the point of her story was that how oftentimes we, through choices of self-preservation, do not act when we see some type of injustice or some type of something going on. And she said that after a while of this anguish, that maybe 2.5 minutes later that this young girl, Hannah, she called her Hannah B, stood up and yelled out an explicative, and she said, "Screw this." And she went and took the goldfish and put the goldfish back in the water. And upon that, the teacher walked in and he looked at all of those who had not moved and he said, "I want you to look at what the world has done to you." She went on to say that it was one of the most powerful moments of her life. She began to look at her own self-preservation. She began to adopt this label, the bystander effect, and made a vow that she would never do that again. That is one way to look at this. So again, remember, I've been outside. It's a beautiful day. I also realize that everybody else is not experiencing the same beautiful day that I am. So here's what's fascinating. If you are willing to embrace a true conscious diversity, meaning that there are cultural differences, there are economic differences, there are all different types of just extraordinary nuance that take place within every sentient being. She's telling the story from her particular perspective. And my partner and I were talking about this because we find that this is something that helps us individually grow. We always want to be inquisitive about these hard lines in the sand that we draw and how that really isn't beneficial. And so we were talking about this video and we said, wouldn't it be interesting to go around to every student in that circle and get their point of view? So far, we have this one girl's, which is very impactful and very filled with emotion and charge. But what if there were other students in the circle who, let's say, many of them had had dozens and dozens of goldfish as they were kids, and that many of those, if not all of them, died, and it became customary to sort of flushing them down the toilet. So their view of a goldfish is not the same as hers. It doesn't mean that anybody's view is right. And it actually doesn't mean that someone who has become accustomed to the in and out death of aquarian fish is callous and wrong. But it begs for us to begin to look at nuance, to begin to look at the cultural difference. What if there is someone in there who is from an impoverished upbringing and really their only lifeline is to get into a university and education is everything? And so again, how can you judge someone? How can you create just a flat-lined right or wrong stance about this example? Because in all actuality, the teacher, as well intended as the teacher was, that exercise was manipulative. He was deliberately trying to cause a reaction to make a point, a really great point. But I would be interested to know where the dialogue from the exercise went. Was it only about if you didn't respond, then look what the world has done for you? Or is there a greater discussion to be had? And so it reminded me too of many times in my spiritual career being a part of communities where a leader, a minister, has asked someone to dress up as a homeless person and purposefully either disrupt a service or a workshop or a potluck or something of that nature in order to prove a point. And it's interesting with those that the two times that I was witness to that, it didn't go so well, meaning that even though the point was made, there was more resentment from everybody in the crowd for having been manipulated that way. I don't know what other way to address the situation in order to create a teaching moment or a lesson, but you start to see that is everybody who became offended and felt manipulated wrong? Again, no hard line in the sand, right? So another element that I was witness to this week was email thread, and I noticed that, and I've done this myself, is that sometimes when we get exasperated with life, we will make statements like, "I don't care what anybody else thinks," or "I really don't need anybody. I'll just do it myself." And really, these types of statements, if they were true without any kind of ammunition to them or accusation to them or manipulation to them, we wouldn't say them. If I really was in a place of calm and peace, I wouldn't have to announce that I don't care what anybody else thinks. I would just do my work and I would offer my gifts and I would be content with where I was. But when I advertise it, that tells me there's a nuance there. That tells me that there's manipulation there and that there is some type of cry for help. Because I can tell you, having been a person who has had to face what I've called the Lone Ranger syndrome, meaning that it felt safer for me to just do things by myself rather than include people. Why? Because of abuse, because of breaches of trust, because of all different types of things from very young, from adolescence. And so many of us have varying percentages of Lone Ranger syndrome inside of us, not because we hate everybody, but because we're still working through that breach of trust that's very, very deeply ensconced in our psyche. And so we're all developing. So just as we can't draw hard lines in the sand with regards to culture, with regards to spiritual indoctrination, religious indoctrination, everybody's doing what they can. And so what's the point in this message? And then what is the actual benefit or thing that we can do? So I have to pause and I have to reflect again about everything that we've just discussed. Number one, being outside, enjoying the sunshine, coming to the realization that everybody is not experiencing the same thing that I am. There's something really powerful about the most simple realization like that. Watching that TikTok, having an emotional experience, thinking, wow, that was really something. And then beginning to realize that not everybody in the room probably shared the same experience that she did. Realizing that everything has nuance and that ultimately what was happening was a sort of manipulation to foster an emotion, to create a life lesson. Reflecting on the times that those types of manipulative stunts have been pulled in spiritual centers that I've been a part of. Granularly looking at my own actions of manipulation with regards to my work, wanting something from people, trying to buy into the perfect way to draft a newsletter in order to appeal, and getting hurt or feeling sensitive or wondering, what did I do wrong when people unsubscribe? All of this is a shared experience. All of this is an example of how everybody is dealing with, filtering, processing all of the stuff that comes with being human. And ultimately, all that we all can collectively agree on is to stop and pause, to get quiet, and to notice our feelings, our responses, again, birthed from our belief systems, and consider that just because that's how we feel does not make it right, does not make it the mandate for how other people should behave. It's our own personal process and inner inquiry where we get to decide, how do we best serve ourselves and others? And the answer is not a blanketed statement. It is the most critical and valuable piece of personal wisdom that we can subscribe to. I believe. And that means that it requires us to develop a sort of ability to pause every single time we want to announce something with regards to what we think others should do, to announce it and to say, am I doing this from a pure truth, or am I doing this because I want people to like me? Am I doing this because I'm trying to protect a particular self-image? All of those things are worthy of a discipline of being able to pause throughout an entire 24-hour capsule of behavior to continually examine what is our motivation. And here's the beautiful thing. Whenever or however we arrive at that willingness to develop that skill of pausing and examining is the perfect journey. Because you see, everyone, myself included, who might say, well, I don't care what other people think. I actually have to go down that road of getting to that point of saying that, so that then I can get beyond that to see how that lacked credibility in order to be able to eat and a little bit of my own humble pie and be willing to surrender whatever the fear is and to surrender my allegiance to a Lone Ranger syndrome. Did you follow what I just said? So everybody's on their path, and they will arrive at these aha moments or these paradigm shifts when they arrive. It's not our job to judge where someone is on that path. It is our job to do what? To see our own credibility, our own honesty, and our own compassionate nature where we are on that journey. That's what will bring healing to the world. And inexplicably and paradoxically, that's what makes community so intrinsically challenging, because we're trying to get and make everybody be on the same page. I don't know how that happens, other than the fact that once we do our own work, we can then welcome everybody wherever they are, on whatever page they are, genuinely. And we get to learn how to speak to all the different pages, to all the different stops along the way. Because ultimately, the only real lesson is to say, you are loved unconditionally. You are held in a divine grace that does not care what you've done or what it takes for you to get to a place of self-realization. All that you get to understand is that no matter how long or the ways in which you do it, you are always loved. You are always valued, and you will arrive in reunion and harmony with the one, just like the rest of us, because we're all the same. That's ultimately the lesson. And that's where being artful and being mindful and being and developing a skill where we can teach people that. Now, that doesn't dilute in any way advocacy and participation and moving into states of inequality to try to bring equilibrium and unilateral justice for all. But it means, again, how do you do this in a way that isn't bringing aggression to aggression? How do you do this in a way that isn't posturing in order to kind of manipulate people into behaving and doing something? And again, it's a lifelong learning lesson that happens by living life. So whether you agree with any of this or are partial of that, I hope that what you arrive at and what you hear is that it will take as long as it takes, and you can never get it right, and you can never get it done. That's a line from Abraham Hicks material. You'll never get it wrong, and you'll never get it done is a great gem that you can see and that you can hold as comfort with regards to where you are. Just hang in there. Just continue to get quiet and be honest with yourself about, are the words that I'm about to speak really true, or are they designed in order to get something? So all that we can do is to examine that. That's the paradox, and that's the nuance, and that's the juiciness of being on the dance floor with growth. And so know that no matter what, you're exactly where you need to be. God bless.